Election lies still being told by the former president, and today we got word that the man in Mar-a-Lago is predicting he'll soon be returned to office. CNN political analyst and New York Times Washington correspondent Maggie Haberman tweeting today, Trump has been telling a number of people he's in contact with that he expects he'll get reinstated by August. And keeping him honest, there's no such thing as a former president getting reinstated, and even if there was, he won't be. The image of a one-term former president milling around in his Florida club talking endlessly to anyone who'll still sit there long enough to listen about phony election results and imaginary ballots is certainly rather sad and pathetic, but it's more than that. It has real-world consequences. Republican politicians in Congress and state legislatures across the country, hoping to be noticed perhaps by the former president, are trying to enact laws based on his lies, limiting voting, curtailing the investigation into the insurrection. Some followers of the president, like retired three-star general and former national security advisor Michael Flynn, who's now selling QAnon merchandise online and repeating QAnon-favored slogans at times, seems to support a coup now against President Biden. Here he is this past weekend at a conference in Dallas, answering a question about why a Myanmar-style coup can't happen here.
I want to know why what happened in Myanmar can't happen here.
No reason. I mean, it should happen here. No reason. That's right.
Well, just as he has every time, his Q-curious statements have gotten him in hot water. Lieutenant General Flynn is now trying to gaslight people into believing he said the opposite, what you just heard. A formerly respected military officer casually talking about a coup in America is shocking, or it should be. I recently talked with Harvard's Stephen Levitsky, who co-wrote a book called How Democracies Die, about this moment we're in right now. Steve, has there been another point in American history where democracy was as threatened as it potentially is now?
The Civil War.
Yeah.
Beyond the Civil War, no. Certainly in no one's living memory has, not Nixon, not Roosevelt, not McCarthyism, democracy's never been under threat in this way. And we do not consider ourselves particularly alarmist. And we are now convinced that there's a serious chance that the Republican Party tries to steal the 2024 election. I think 2020 ended up being a dress rehearsal in which Republicans learned that there are levers that they can pull to throw out ballots in rival strongholds based on false allegations of fraud or based on technicalities.
Professor Levitsky and his co-author Daniel Ziblatt are two of 100 scholars of democracy who today warned that, quote, our entire democracy is now at risk. They continue, quote, elected Republican leaders have had numerous opportunities to repudiate Trump and his Stop the Steal crusade, which led to the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6. Each time, they've sidestepped the truth and enabled the lie to spread. They conclude by urging lawmakers, in this case largely Democrats, to do whatever is necessary, including suspending the filibuster to pass laws guaranteeing the vote to all Americans equally and preventing state legislatures from manipulating the rules in order to manufacture results. Quoting their closing words, our democracy is fundamentally at stake. More now from CNN's Caitlin Collins, who's at the White House for us tonight. So what's the president today? He vowed to ramp up efforts to protect voting rights. Are there any more details on that?
Well, he said he not only wants to ramp up efforts to protect them, to get more people registered to vote, but Anderson, he also wants to push back on these efforts to suppress voting rights and to restrict them, as we've seen play out in several states following the 2020 election. And President Biden said part of that involves putting the Vice President, Kamala Harris, in charge of getting that push on Capitol Hill to get those major legislation on election laws, on voting rights passed through Congress. But of course, Anderson, that is going to be a very tough job, given they've basically languished after passing the House, because now they're up against a divided Senate and they don't even have all of the Democrats on board, something that the president did allude to today.
I hear all the folks on TV saying, why doesn't Biden get this done? Well, because Biden only has a majority of effectively 4 votes in the House and a tie in the Senate, with 2 members of the Senate who vote more with my Republican friends. But we're not giving up.
Now, that comment there at the end, that was directed at Senator Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin. Of course, those are those two moderate Democrats. It's not true that they vote more with Republicans than they do with Democrats, but he's basically saying that they're not always a guaranteed Democratic vote. And we've seen Senator Manchin say he does not support that one bill on Capitol Hill. That's the one that would really change the way you see election law. And so he was basically acknowledging just how tough it's going to be and how tough the job is going to be for the vice president.
What are the next steps? I mean, are there, plans that the White House has?
I think the next step really depends on what lawmakers do, because you have seen Senator Schumer say that he is going to bring that election law bill to the floor in a matter of weeks. That's going to increase pressure on a lot of these lawmakers. And so the question is not just, are you going to get these Democrats on board? You'd also still need to get 10 Senate Republicans to vote for this, Anderson. And right now they do not have this. So the question is, do they go another route? Do they introduce a new legislation that could actually get Republican support and get those Democrats on board, keep the Democrats on board, or do they explore abolishing the filibuster? That is something that you've seen several Texas Democrats call on them to look at, because they say it's just so important to get something like this passed through Congress, because otherwise we're going to continue facing these efforts in all of these states, seeing these election laws be introduced by Republicans and potentially even pass.